So, the get verb. As we mentioned earlier, get is used to retrieve resources, which means you should never use it to add or update or delete resources. It should be used only for retrieval. Now, it might retrieve a single resource or many resources or not at all if no resource is found according to the parameters. But again, you should never use it for any other types of actions. Now, what's important to know about the get verb is that this is the default verb of the browser. So if you type an address in the address bar of your browsers and hit enter, then the browser sends a get action with the URL, of course, to the server, and this is what the server executes, a get request. We will see that in a minute. Now, get requests are usually combined with parameters, so the server will know what kind of resources it should retrieve. It's not mandatory, and we will see some examples which will not use parameters, but sometimes you will find them. If you remember, we mentioned earlier that a REST request is comprised of 4 components: the method, the URL, the headers, and the body. Now, a GET request should not include body. All the information the server needs in order to execute the action is enclosed within the method and the URL. The server should not require any other information beside the method and the URL. Okay, and now let's demonstrate the GET request. So first, remember that we said that browser by default send a GET request from their address bar. So let's see this happening. So this is a quite standard Chrome browser, and I want to launch the developer tools. If you are familiar with Chrome's developer tools, that's great, and if not, never mind. We are not going to deep dive into them. So click F15 and you will see this small window opened at the right hand side of the screen. Now make sure that the network tab is selected. And now go here and type whatever address you would like. I will go again with google.com and enter and see what's happening here. So what we see here is a recording of all the requests that the browser made. Of course, it asked google.com, and then there were some kind of JavaScript files and icons and images and many other things. But we will focus only on the first request, which is google.com. So click it here, and what we will see here is a quite detailed description of the request and the response. And the thing that really interesting for us is this. The request method is get. So even though the word get is not written anywhere in the address bar, this is what the browser sent to the server. We can also see the status code, which is 200, and we already know that 200 meaning OK. Great. So we saw what the browser is doing, but what's really interesting for us is, of course, the REST API. So let's go again to the Bceptor for our page that we built with our subdomain. Again, my subdomain is API course. You probably selected other subdomains. And we will start building a new API. So again, let's go here to the mocking rules and click it. And we will create new rule. So what are we going to do here? With the method, we are going to stay with get. This is the verb that we are discussing in this lecture. And here in the API URL, I will define the following API. So this will be /API/order. And I'll just modify the response body to be order. And we will create another object here, another JSON object. And we will call it, I'll call this one, sorry, order date, and make it 12/12/2018, and order user, which is the user that made the order, and let's say it was user number 17, and close this one, close this one. Great. And let's save the rule, but before it, just remember this part, /API/order, and save rule. Great. Let's close this window. Again, copy this part so you will be able to access the API. So Control C. And now let's go to Postman right here, and I bring it from the other screen. So here I've already have the prefix. So all I need to do is simply change test to order. So this is the API that we created in Bceptor and send. And this is what we've got, and this is exactly what we were expecting. If you've got anything different than that, some kind of error message or things like that, then be sure that you used the same verb. It should be get. Make sure that the URL is correct, and also double check the JSON that you typed in Bceptor. So just so we will remember it, this is what you should see in the response body. If you see anything else, then maybe the JSON is malformed and can't be validated and returned. Okay, great. So we've built our first GET request. Now, there is some limitation to GET requests. For example, the length of a GET request is limited. Now, the limit itself is varied by browser and by server. So there is no a definite number that all servers and browsers are compliant with, but it usually is somewhere around 1,000 or 2,000 characters. Now, let's demonstrate what's happening when sending a too long GET request. So I'll do something like this, and I'll take it and copy it to make it quicker. I have no idea how many characters are here, but there are definitely a lot. And let's add this again and send. Okay, and now look at the response that we've got from the Bceptor server. We've got a very nicely formatted message, actually HTML formatted, and it basically tells us that the URI is too large. And you can also see here the status code. Status code is 414, meaning the URI is too large. So you should always keep in mind that there is a limit for the length of the GET request, and make sure not to send too long requests. Now, this limit begs a question. What happens when the query contains too many parameters? For example, let's say I have a list of items of 2,000 items and I want to retrieve them. So in this case, I will have to send this list, this giant list, to the server in order for it to send me back the items. However, this giant list with all its 2,000 items is simply too long to be sent using GET. So what should I do in this case? Well, in this case, we can use the post verb, which we will talk about in a minute. So it's true that post is not targeted towards retrieval actions, but in this specific case, we don't have any other choice. So when dealing with a long list of parameters which can't be sent using GET, then use post.